and what we actually got in 1909. उसको एक दफा जरा देखना जरूरी है. Governor General or Viceroy was the ruler of India. Governor General used to rule India through Executive Council and Imperial Legislative Council. Executive Council में 5 members and all were British. Imperial Legislative Council में these 5 will automatically become members of Imperial Legislative Council, plus there were 16 to 20 additional members, and out of those 16 to 20, 6 to 8 were Indians and 10 to 12 were officials. What Muslim League demanded, Muslims demanded in Shimla deputation, they demanded 50%, 33% seats for Muslims in Imperial Legislative Council. सही है जी? Plus they demanded Muslim seats in Executive Council. The main points. Plus they demanded separate electorates. Main demands. हाँ, इसके अलावा छोटी और भी demands हैं, लेकिन main demands. So what they got in 1909, वही Governor General, Viceroy, 1909 के एक्ट के मुताबिक Executive Council, 5 British, हाँ जी 5 British, plus 1 Indian for the first time was included. And दूसरी तरफ Imperial Legislative Council. Previously बड़ा complex structure, वो 5 आ जाएंगे, additional members, तो ये वो. Now the seats were fixed at 60. Out of those 60, 27 Indian seats and 33 officials. And out of 27, 21 general seats and 6 seats fixed for Muslims for the first time in India. Meaning, separate electorates were also granted to Muslims in 1909. So, यहाँ तक का framework हमने इस पे बात की थी. And up till 1909, if we contextualize the Indian politics, so up till 1909, of course, overall India में Muslim population was 25%. There was no province whereby Muslims were in majority, but in 1905, when East Bengal was established as a province, so it was the only province where Muslims were more than 70%. So in 1909, Muslims in India, they had 2 things. 1, separate electorates, and 2nd, East Bengal. Because in the rest of the provinces, Muslims were not in majority. This was the only province whereby Muslims were in heavy majority. And what happened in 1911, that out of nowhere, this East Bengal province, यानी कि partition of Bengal, was cancelled. Annulment of partition of Bengal. ये मनसूख हो गया because of the pressure carried out by Congress. और जब ये बंगाल सूबा खत्म हो गया, ओनली प्रोविंस वेयर मुस्लिम्स वर इन मेजॉरिटी, तो देन मुस्लिम लीडरशिप को फिर एक कंसर्न डेवलप हुआ दैट द ओनली थिंग दे आर लेफ्ट विद इन 1911 नाउ इज सेपरेट इलेक्टोरेट्स, बस. एंड इफ कांग्रेस उसने और ज्यादा प्रोटेस्ट किया तो सेपरेट इलेक्टोरेट्स भी खत्म हो सकता. सो इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में मुस्लिम लीडरशिप had to decide smartly, strategically, what is going on, particularly since 1858 till 1911. In this whole phase, Muslim leadership, either in the form of Sir Sayyid, Agha Khan, and others, they were trying to remain loyal with British. They believe that Congress is a threat for Muslims, and they believe that only possible way to protect Muslim rights in India is by joining hands with British. So that's why Sir Sayyid also education hasil karo, loyalty towards British rakho. Sahi. That's why All India Muslim League इसके ऑब्जेक्टिव में भी ब्रिटिश के सपोर्ट के पॉइंट्स मौजूद हैं. दैट्स व्हाई के अजीज भी अपनी किताब में लिखता है कि जनाब आगा खान, he wrote to Muslim leadership कि भाई हमें ब्रिटिश के साथ रहना चाहिए, ब्रिटिश को सपोर्ट करना चाहिए इन इंडिया. But this strategy in 1911, this strategy failed. क्यों? Because हमारा सूबा ईस्ट बंगाल, despite the fact that we showed our loyalty towards British, despite the fact that we opted for a legal constitutional platform, despite the fact we didn't involve in any protest in this whole phase, but still we lost our province only because Congress protested. So 1911 was the year, or you can say from 1911 to 1912 was the year in which All India Muslim League, yani ke Muslim leadership, All India Muslim League, one can witness a shift in its political choices. And the most important choice was to join hand with Congress. And for that purpose, efforts of unity were started. And the first step towards the efforts towards this unity is known as 1913, when Jinnah joined All India Muslim League. That was the very first step. Make sure that Jinnah joined politics in 1906, and from 1906 till 1920, Jinnah was member of Congress. Make sure Jinnah joined Muslim League in 1913, and Jinnah remained in Muslim League, yani All India Muslim League, and then it became Pakistan Muslim League till his death, 1948. Make sure Jinnah also joined a third party, 1916, for which he remained member till 1920. Home Rule League. So basically from 1916 till 1920, Jinnah was member of 3 parties in India. And it was very normal at that time. Today, we believe that it's a party defection and a politician must remain in a single party. But Jinnah, at that time, it was culture, it was a tradition. There was nothing wrong at that time that politicians, they were members of different parties. Jinnah was member of 3 parties from 1916 till 20. So nothing strange in this context. Nevertheless, Jinnah joined Muslim League with a purpose. And the only purpose of Jinnah was unity at that time. Unity between Congress and all India Muslim League. That was the purpose. And that unity seems to be nearly impossible. It was not possible. But Jinnah, the way he played his role from 1913 till 1915 made it look so easy. What he did, his first step was change in all India Muslim League constitution. Jinnah believed that Congress, the manifesto or the agenda of Congress is self-rule, that we the Indians must rule India. So all India Muslim League, its objective is quite antithetical to Congress objective. All India Muslim League's objective was to promote sense of loyalty among Muslims towards British. So Jinnah insisted to change it. Because if you would not change it, Congress will never join hands with Muslim League. So this objective was changed in 1913. And it was changed with the idea of responsible governments, that all India Muslim League also want responsible governments in India. So now this idea of self-rule and responsible governments, if not equivalent, they are symmetrical to each other. So the very first step which was taken by Jinnah was change in the constitution of all India Muslim League, so that then we are, a point to start negotiation with Congress. After that, the second step, which was planned by Jinnah, is known as Memorandum of 1915. As you know, that since 1909, Imperial Legislative Council, there were 27 elected Indians. Out of those 27 elected Indians, we know it that 6 were Muslims. In 1915, 19 out of 27 elected Indians, they adopted a memorandum in assembly known as Memorandum of 19. Through that memorandum, these 19 members, they demanded reforms from British. And all these 19s out of 27 were either only members of Congress plus All India Muslim League. So that was the second step, that the two major parties of India in assembly, they collectively put forward their demands to the British, that what they want in India. So that was the second step. But the British paid no attention because British were busy in World War I, as you know it. So British found no time, and they didn't find it, a conducive time to debate over the future reforms in India when they are engaged in World War I. It's 1915. So British paid no attention towards this memorandum of 19. Third initiative which Jinnah took was 2 sessions, 1 city. In 1915, both the Congress and All India Muslim League, their sessions, annual sessions, were held in the same city, in separate places. City named Bombay. Within a same city, on separate places, both the leadership, they conducted their annual session separately, independently, separate. But they interacted with each other. From their individual sessions, they endorsed Memorandum of 19, both the parties. So in this way, through these 3 steps, he created that environment whereby when the 4th step came up, it was not a surprise. That was Lucknow session, which was a combined session. Combined session, first and the last session, combined session. Both the parties in 1916, they held a combined session in Lucknow. And in Lucknow, whatever happened was basically practiced earlier in Bombay, in Memorandum of 19. So there was nothing new. Lucknow was a symbol. All the things which were signed, which was delivered in Lucknow session, were practiced previously. So it was a symbolic sign. It was a sign of unity. Although unity was very much there, even before 1916. From 1915 to 1916, unity was very much there. But it was a symbolic sign that today we are conducting our combined session. It means we are together now. So that combined session, whatever was agreed between Congress and All India Muslim League in that combined session, is popularly known as Lucknow Pact. So one thing is very much sure, that this Lucknow Pact will not be constituted merely by some points of unity only. No. Both the parties would definitely would demand something from British as well. So basically, what we consider Lucknow Pact as a unity is just a small part of Lucknow Pact. The broader canvas is that not only they united, but they unitedly, they asked for demands, reforms in India. From whom? British. So now we have to analyze the demands, what they asked from British, as well as few points of unity. This whole package is known as, you can say, salient features of Lucknow Pact. So now let us start these features. And again, in order to understand these features, we have to make this chart again. What British introduced in 1892, their Councils Act. Then what they introduced in 1909 Act. What was demanded in 1916 Lucknow Pact. And what actually British granted in 1919 Act. Of course, we knew that these 5 would become member here, plus 16 members. Out of those additional members, 10 to 12 officials and 6 to 8 Indians. 1909, 5 British plus 1 Indian. Imperial Legislative Council, 60. 27 Indians. 33 officials. Out of those 27, 21 journal seats, 6 Muslims. So what they demanded in Lucknow Pact? Governor General, Viceroy. Executive Council, Imperial Legislative Council. They demanded 50% Indians here. That minimum 50% Indian representation must be there in Executive Council of India. Before going into the further demands and their details, it is mandatory to analyze the impact of this demand in the next forthcoming reforms as well, so that it will become easy to understand each and every reform demand. Of course, in 1919, Governor General or Viceroy, the same person. One, same Executive Council. So how would British respond to this demand? Because Lucknow Pact is not an official document. It's a demand package. It's a unity package between two parties. It was not an official document. सरकारी नहीं है, ये सरकारी है, ये सरकारी अंग्रेज की तरफ से, ये सरकारी है, ये तो दो पार्टीज के दरमियान का उनकी डिमांड है. सो इस डिमांड पे ब्रिटिश ने कैसे रिस्पॉन्ड की? When in 1919 British introduced reforms, 5 British members were there as previous practice, but Indian seats were increased from 1 to 3. So it means that British took pressure of Lucknow Pact. They increased Indian seats. Although it was not 50%, there were not 5 Indians, but still nothing is better than, something is better than nothing. So the very first demand, one can easily conclude that if you would able to understand Lucknow Pact, you would nearly understand more than half of the freedom movement. Because when you try to elaborate this point of Executive Council, that the Executive Council was the Supreme Council of India, and previously there was no Indian, then only one Indian, and when both the parties applied pressure on British, they were forced to increase Indian seats from 1 to 3. So when you will write it as the significance or importance or the impact of Lucknow Pact, so when you will write this, it will automatically become a one long paragraph. But this, in this style, you can easily understand it. You can easily absorb it, and you will never forget it. Second thing, of course, Imperial Legislative Council. Lucknow Pact demanded 150 seats. Previously, there were only 60 seats. They demanded 150 seats. And out of these 150, they demanded that only 30 seats must be fixed for officials and 120 seats for Indians. Previously, there were only 27 seats for Indians. Now they demanded 120 seats for Indians. This 120 is basically 80%. It's 80% of the total seats. 120 is 80% of 150. So previously there were only 27. So they were demanding more Indian seats and less British officials. And out of these 120, because it was a unity pact as well between Indian National Congress and British and Congress, Indian National Congress and Muslim League, sorry. So there must be a unity point as well. Out of these 120, both the parties agreed that 40 seats will be given to Muslims. So previously, there were only 6 seats for Muslims. And if it is accepted by the British, 40 seats will be granted to Muslims. Now, how British responded to it? British responded it by redesigning this legislative house. They labeled it as Central Legislature, Markazi Kanun Saz Assembly. central legislature. So in this central legislature, there will be two houses. One house is known as Indian Legislative Assembly. They also changed the name, Indian Legislative Assembly. And the other house was Senate. Senate of India. In few books, you would come across this name as Council of State. It's the same thing. In few books, you would come across the name Senate, and in few books, you would come across the name Council of State. Simple. In this Imperial Legislative Council, 145 seats were allowed. So you demanded 150 and British granted 145. Out of this 145, 103 seats were fixed for Indians. You demanded 120. They granted 103. Still, it's a lot of seats, because if you would compare it with the previous act, only 27 Indians. Now 103 officially announced, and remaining 42 officials. Out of these 103, how many seats were there for Muslims? 30 seats were reserved for Muslims by the British, and 73 general seats. So this second point was quite in favor of Muslims of India, because previously there were only 6 seats for Muslims, and now they will get 30 seats. In addition to this, British also granted seats in the Senate of India. The total seats were fixed at 60. It is something new in India, popularly known as bicameral legislature. ठीक है जी। ओए अंग्रेजी कोई ज्यादा तो नहीं हो रही, मौत तो नहीं पड़ी हुई? अच्छा भाई, किसी ना किसी को ना अपनी अम्मी बाजी एक जरूर करानी होती है किसी ना किसी लेक्चर में। डायरकी आ जाती है, डायरकी तू मैं रिश्तेदारी करनी, डायरकी ना सबर कर। और बेचारे पहले अंग्रेजी सुने, फिर नोट करें, फिर अंग्रेजी का तर्जमा करें दिमाग में, फिर उसके बाद समझें, वो इतनी देर में बात आगे चली जाती है। सर 73 जनरल सीट्स की समझ नहीं आई बेटा तो इग्नोर कर दे, इसका मतलब है तूने आखिरी क्लास को नहीं दी हुई जिसमें पूरा सेपरेट इलेक्टोरेट समझाया था, तो इग्नोर कर दे, इतना मेरे पास टाइम नहीं है, एक ही दफा समझाता हूँ मैं, बार बार नहीं समझाता। So out of those 60 seats, 34 seats were reserved for Indians, and remaining seats, 26 seats, were fixed for, again, officials. And out of these 34 Indians, 11 seats were also fixed for Muslims in this Senate. So Muslims gained in combined 41 seats in central legislature. So that was a great sign for Muslims, especially. So up till now, we discussed only 2 points of Lucknow Pact. One related to Executive Council. Second related to Imperial Legislative Council. The way British announced a new model of bicameral 2 assemblies. Why British announced 2 assemblies? Because the British narrative was that it's the promotion of democracy. And true, very true. In any country, if it's a democracy, you would come across bicameral legislature. A true democracy, you would definitely come across bicameral legislature in any true democracy. Even a democracy like Pakistan, you would come across bicameral legislature. Bicameral legislature, whereby there are 2 houses, is considered as that in that country, democracy is present. Now it's healthy or weak, whatsoever, but democracy is present. So British narrative was that we are trying to promote democracy in India. सही जी? सर बहुत मुश्किल अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं। तूने भी मुश्किल अंग्रेजी सुनी कब है? आसान जी अंग्रेजी बोल रहे हैं। उधर से मेरे सामने किताब खुली हुई है सईद अकबर साहब, तो वो जिस तरह किताब में अब अंग्रेजी चल रही है तो मैं इस तरह बोलना ना, मैं आपसे तो अंग्रेजी बोलने वालों में से नहीं, मैं कैसे बोल सकता हूँ अंग्रेजी? तो वो किताब खुली हुई सामने, उसमें जो लिखा भाई वो बोल रहा हूँ। बुक सर, हाँ जी बुक, बाकी बाजी सर, ये किसी लड़के ने अगर किया होता ना एक कमेंट तो मैं उसको बुक का नाम भी बताता, लेकिन अब आप लड़की ने रिप्लाई किया तो इसलिए मैं बुक का नाम नहीं बता सकता। जेंडर, इसको डिस्क्रिमिनेशन समझने मेरी तरफ से, ठीक है? लो जी, सो देखते हैं जी फिर। बट द रियलिटी वाज दैट ब्रिटिश न्यू दिस थिंग कि भाई ये जितनी सीटें मांग रहे हैं ना जी इन इंपीरियल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल, इफ वी विल ग्रांट देम, सो ऑल बिल्स, लॉज, उनको तो इंडियंस डोमिनेट कर जाएंगे। एंड इफ दे विल नॉट ग्रांट सीट्स, तो जनाब देयर इज अ यूनिटी बिटवीन मुस्लिम लीग एंड कांग्रेस, तो प्रॉब्लम बनेगी, हमारे लिए प्रोटेस्ट होगी। So this house which they created, this house which they created, this one, it was a very weak house, very weak assembly. Sahij, if this house where Indians are in majority, even if they would object any British law, if they would vote against any British law, then the matter will be sent to Senate. And even in Senate, which is much stronger house, stronger assembly, upper house. Even if this house would reject the bill, then they have granted veto power to Governor General of India. That whatever Indians would do in these assemblies, it will not matter unless and until Governor General has the veto power. So if Indians wanted to change this veto power, then this Senate would come up with 2/3 representation, which was not possible for Indians. So in a way, they promoted democracy, but they also extended their power as well. Nevertheless, Indian representation and Muslim representation increased in houses. ठीक है जी? Which was a very good sign, because previously there were only 27 elected Indians, seats 6 Muslims, and now in combined there are 137 Indians, 34 idhar, 103 idhar. And out of those 137, 41 were Indian. Most of the seats were general seats. So Indian and Muslim representation increased. So up till now, we have only discussed 2 points related to Lucknow Pact, but both points, through these both points, we have basically covered nearly 30 years of freedom movement from 1892 till 1919. That whatever has been happening in the past, if we have no understanding of that, we cannot understand whatever happened in the future. And this nucleus is Lucknow Pact. Whatever happened previously, whatever happened afterwards, because of the demands of Lucknow Pact. So if you are able to understand Lucknow Pact, then it means you are at home and you are quite capable to analyze 30 years of freedom movement easily. Now, in addition to these points, there were other points as well in Lucknow Pact.